How long had Black Desert Resort been in the works before you physically opened everything up?
I put I put Black Desert under contract in 2004 to purchase the land. So it's been a while. Um, and there was a real estate boom at that time, and these tiny towns couldn't really get their head around something like Black Desert while it was already booming. So I took an interest in the development of the company developing the Entrada at Snow Canyon Country Club, and worked on that while I was waiting for the boom to end. And so we were on pause. The seller and I were really good friends, and he just said he would wait as long as we needed to. And um, then, of course, the recession came, and so we paused again. And then around 2017, it seemed like it was back to being able to get back to work to develop a new project. And that's when we closed on the property, and we started getting the entitlements to what Black Desert will become, and broke ground about 18 months ago.
And remind me when you opened up for golfers.
Memorial Day of this year.
It's so fresh and so much excitement from just a few months too, with so many cool announcements. For the resort itself, what are the next phases?
Well, we're under construction on what we call the Golf Village, which are some condominium condo hotel. This is really there is whole ownership. People are buying condos, but really it's really a hotel. But we have the Golf Village underway, and we have the Resort Center underway. The Resort Center is 450 rooms, a 24,000 square foot convention center, 15,000 square foot spa, 11,000 square foot pro shop, a few restaurants, and it'll be ready in time for the PGA Tour first week of October. Well, it's not officially scheduled, hasn't been released. They've told me the dates, but they're not totally locked in. So, but let's just say the fall of next year it'll be ready. The Golf Village will be all done. The Family Village will be about half done. And then with the acquisition that we made across the street of Red Mountain Resort, we'll have about 1,000 rooms open for PGA Tour play.
Why did you want to bring professional golf to Utah?
It's almost like a why not? I mean, everything we're doing is like, let's do it the biggest, the most responsible. So we're by far the biggest resort in the state, but at the same time, we've broken the world record for renewable clean energy funding with our initiatives with water conservation and energy. Everything is about doing it at the highest level. And when there was a little bit of hand wringing about the PGA Tour brings, it's a major financial commitment. But it's like, we didn't come this far and do all this to say no to the PGA. so it's kind of like, why not? You have to do it.
I want to talk to you about the LPGA first, because you announced it first, not until 2025, right? What was the dialogue? What was the dialogue like with the LPGA to get them to commit to Utah again? I know they've been here for other tours or versions of the LPGA on a different level, but this is a whole nother level.
That's right. It's the highest level. And so that hasn't happened in Utah in over 60 years, as I'm sure you know. And so what happened was a friend of mine came and said, "Hey, Patrick, does Black Desert want to title sponsor an Epson event, which is more of the farm league, the Epson event up in Salt Lake?" And I said, "Well, I do. We do want to do that. But rather than us just sponsor your tournament, why don't we take over the tournament and you come work with us, and let's do bigger things?" And I didn't even know what that meant. There's just words that came out of my mouth. But we all agreed. And in talking with the LPGA, we were just the team said, "Well, but later we want to bring it down. We want to bring it down here." And the LPGA said, "Well, we can't, because we have a Copper Rock Epson that's in the same region, and they have a protected territory." I said, "Okay, well then let's just make it the full LPGA, the best women in the world." And I said it kind of tongue in cheek, and they said, "Well, we'll come look at your golf course." And it kind of surprised me. And but they came out and looked and said, "I think the ladies would love to have this on their tour stop." And so we, a month later, had a contract with the LPGA. And then, that same friend said, "Hey, what do you think about us just reaching out to the PGA?" And I was like, "Why not?" So we reached out. Almost the exact same thing happened.
It's interesting that the PGA, obviously your announcement came for the PGA after the LPGA, but the PGA event is first.
That's right.
how did all of this work with the timeline? Because you started the dialogue first with the LPGA, but
That's
they
right.
had to extend out, right?
Yeah, the reason is because both events were intended initially to be 2025 inaugural year, but we got calls from both of the tours asking if we could start them in 24. But because the LPGA is a spring event, well, I basically told them both no. They need to start in 25 because I wanted the resort center open. I wanted the amenities. I wanted to be a great golf experience for the golfers and the fans. And so, I told them both no. But I went back to the PGA and well, at some point in this timeline, the PGA kept pushing, and I found that we could pull the resort center completion done and operating from what was originally scheduled to be January of 2025, but we paid a couple $1 million in overtime to all the construction guys to pull it forward to October so that we could be operating that. And so, but we couldn't pull it all the way back to May. So the women start in 2025 just because we couldn't get it done in time.
You mentioned kind of what the LPGA said about the course and the layout and everything. What did the PGA say about it to you?
Well, we've had a lot of walks. We've had probably 10 trips, and we walked it just over the last 2 days. We had the PGA out, and they were here for 2 solid days, just going through everything. And the first trip, Steve Winslow, who's in charge of course design and basically approves golf courses for the PGA, his comment that he made was, yeah, Patrick, we have spectacular golf courses on the PGA Tour, and we have epic holes, but nothing is going to pop on global television like this will. And just the red rock, the black lava, the green, the white dunes, it's just going to pop. And so they were really excited about just having something that was going to show so well. And that's one of the reasons why Greater Zion, our Washington County Board of Tourism, why they chose to be the presenting sponsor so that they could really get the Greater Zion name out there.
We're thinking fall 2024. That'll be the PGA event timeframe when they release the schedule.
For sure. It is 90% likely to be the first week of October.
Very cool. So is it still going to be named the Black Desert Championship, or does that change now with the presenting sponsorship you just mentioned?
No, it's the Black Desert Championship presented by Greater Zion.
How rare is that? I haven't heard of a whole lot of tournaments named after the course with the name recognition of the course itself. I've been watching golf a little bit. I love the sport. I've always been a fan of the PGA ever since I was a little kid. When I heard that, I felt like that was pretty unique. How did you get to pull that off?
We pulled it off because we felt like if for us to pull the trigger here, we wanted to pull the trigger and get the deal done with the PGA. We didn't want to go out there beating the bushes for a title sponsor. So then we ran some numbers, and a title sponsor on this is probably over $10 million a year. And so we just figured that we could absorb that in our marketing dollars, just because this is such a big resort and the halo effect of the PGA Tour, that we just said, we prefer to have this be the Black Desert Championship over some other name.
When you guys opened up, I sent out just the URL to your course to a number of people I know that just play kind of all across the country, and they're fascinated by the course. But for golf fans that'll come here for the LPGA or the PGA, what are they going to get? What is this experience expected to be like come 2024, 2025? Especially to the people that love going to these events in different parts of the country. This is going to be probably a unique little experience for people.
I think there's a few key differences. First of all, you don't usually have a PGA Tour course. There are a few, but you don't have something that has the amazing amenities like a water park bigger than anything on the Las Vegas Strip. There's a lot more experience outside the ropes than what you typically have. You can stay on site. Most places there's not enough rooms. You can stay on site. The family can be in the water park. They can be at the spa. There's going to be 15 restaurants just in the Ivins portion alone. So you can dine, shop, swim, golf, everything without leaving the property. The other thing is when you do leave the property, there's not many places you can go. Well, there's exactly zero in the United States that you can go to that has more state and national parks surrounding us. So there's just so much more to do for a vacation, extended vacation to this area of the United States outside of the Gulf.
Have you had people to reach out to try to volunteer already?
We have hundreds. We haven't asked for volunteers yet, but we've had about 300 or 400 inquiries so far.
You mentioned some of the things to do. I mean, that part of the state of Utah is just spectacular. I think people recognize that, whether they're from here or not. But what sort of economic impact do you anticipate from either or both of these events?
I'd rather just speak to combined because that's more what I have off the top of my head. But we're expecting an annual economic impact, including the halo effect, of about $70 million per year to the area. Which, this isn't a big city, so it's a pretty decent impact.
A city that does have Ironman events, does have a fair share of larger scale, unique sporting events and concerts and things like that, but nothing of this magnitude. I think at least in the when you combine the two. How do you keep this momentum going? Are there contracts in place that says you'll be able to do this for a few years? Does year one need to be perfect? I mean, how do you keep this going consecutively for years to come with these big events?
Well, we have multiple year contracts with both tour, and the relationship is the conversation is that we want to do this for decades. Everybody involved wants to do it, see this be sustainable, do this for decades. We're to support it, to support the entertainment side of this. Aside from golf, we're building a concert venue that can swing to basketball games and other sporting events that can be indoor or outdoor, because the hotel will wrap around the concert venue. So if you're staying on the interior of the hotel, the cost of your room includes the ticket to the basketball game or the concert, because you walk out on your balcony and you've essentially got front row seats. And so we intend to keep the momentum by adding on to what's already here. And the goal really is to become what's considered in the nation the go-to professional sports franchises go to practice and recreate.
It's a great segue to my next question, because there's been so much discussion about Major League Baseball coming to Utah, the NHL potentially coming to Utah. During all of that, the LPGA and PGA came out that they're coming back to Utah, or coming to Utah for the first time in many, many, many years. Do you think these events and your property there could sway professional sports franchises to perhaps call Utah home?
I certainly do. I think that there's a really good symbiotic relationship between northern and southern Utah. They have the Corn Ferry up in northern Utah for the PGA, and so we've got the feeder league and the pro, and we're looking at, for the major sports franchises up north, we want to become feeder, and just it goes back and forth from north to south and south to north. And I think we can work together and collaborate on, okay, Major League Baseball is St. George isn't big enough, but it's big enough for us to have a farm league and work with Larry H. Miller, if that's what happens, to make those things happen. So I think it can be, Utah. It's funny that one of the things that PGA was concerned about was the little bit of lack of population for the state of Utah. And I said, but you won't find a state that has more fiercely loyal residents and fans. I mean, so it's like we're actually like 10 times our population because of the fierce loyalty.
You mentioned the Miller Group. Have you had any
Yep.
dialogue with them, or Ryan Smith, or any of these bigger players and some of the other movements?
I have had conversations with Larry H. Miller on a couple of different matters, including the LPGA and PGA. I've had the Jazz down. We were looking at them potentially talking to them about moving the preseason games to our arena when we open it. We went over to Tuacahn and contemplated having a Jazz preseason game at Tuacahn on an evening of the PGA Tour. So that could be super fun, kind of polytechnic of sports to have, PGA by day and NBA by night.
How are you feeling today? I mean, you're kind of in the middle of all of this. I know you've been at this sort of resort development for a long time, from what I could figure out, but this seems just so different for you, or at least maybe on a ramped up level. Am I right?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's not, I've done lots and lots of projects, but this is a once in a lifetime project or once in a thousand lifetimes project. I mean, it's just, it's on a massive scale. But like I said, it's a massive scale, all the amenities, but there's equal parts wanting to do it responsibly. And so it makes the whole thing a lot of fun, very gratifying, and it's a little daunting at times, but most days it's just super fun.
How is Black Desert different than the other premier experience sort of style resorts that offer an attempt of this sort of thing?
I think some of the key differences is we are adequately funded for as long as we need to subsidize any of the cost of keeping this golf course at a PGA Tour level. I think the fact that we have such a huge resort to support the green fees that are not the green fees, sorry, the tee times, we're not going to have a hard time filling it. I think it's a much bigger threat to us that we only have one golf course to feed 3,000 rooms in a PGA Tour and an LPGA Tour, and and then where do those other guests play when we're shut down for 2 weeks while we're getting the courses ready for those events? I'm not worried at all about the course getting the play it needs to be profitable. A little bit more concerned about not having more golf.
I know you mentioned the water conservation. I think it's interesting. Could you elaborate on that? Because I know we talked about that really briefly towards the beginning of this, but I think it's big, especially in southern Utah. I know that water is a little bit more plentiful this year than years past, just based off of the moisture that we got in the winter. But how are you conserving water as a desert track, basically?
Yeah, well, low flow valves on irrigation, regenerative media. That some of this is about the water park as well. Regenerative media, how we recapture. We also are using only gray water on the golf course, which is, I think we're the only ones that can say that, the only course that can say that. But also the way we did our water park, for example, people hear that and say that's irresponsible in the desert, but we're actually using a fourth of the water than if we would have done quarter-acre lots on it, because of the water conservation measures that were put in place. Also, this is a 630-acre property, and we're only developing about 200 of it. So the rest is going into a conservation easement, and the golf course uses a fraction if we would have just done typical development and just put houses all over this thing. And so some of it is about water conservation, but also some of it is water conservation because of land conservation.
Anything else you want to get out to Utahns today?
I think that it's really important to me for Black Desert to be a voice of not just talk about it. We've got some plans to elevate the LPGA side that is going to blow everybody's minds. So I think support of the women's side of golf is really, really key to the messaging of Black Desert, because we are going to blow their minds.